Welcome to Kidmissing Radio. I am your host, Angelina Wilson. I have a bunch of new information on the cases of Clifford Sherwood and George's Grumbley. A lot has come out. And it appears there may be another suspect in the case as well. So I wanted to bring it to you here. I did a quick version over on Kidmissing TV, and I'm going to bring you the whole thing here now that I have found more information. Okay, what happened was that I was writing my cases for January and looking in Canada. And then I saw C. Thorne, but it was a picture I recognized. I was a bit confused, so I clicked on it, and it was Clifford Sherwood. But it was Clifford Sherwood Thorne. Couldn't figure out for the life of me why it said that. So, I finally did, after doing some research. Apparently, his father, Tex Sherwood's real name was Edward Thorne, and he had families all over Canada and the United States, all with repeating names of children, which is really weird. Anyway. So, he had been the prime suspect in a lot of people's minds in the case. But if that were the case, where was George's? And why is he so forgotten in this? He's a missing 12-year-old boy. I don't understand that. George's family initially thought that maybe they had drowned. Maybe they had gone fishing in a place that George liked to go fishing. Or Georgie, as he was called. Those places have been searched to no avail. A torso of a little boy showed up, which I guess turned out to be neither of them. Where Clifford's mother felt that Clifford's father had taken him because there was a picture that supposedly showed Clifford older than he had been when he had been with his mother. Well, there are a couple of problems with that theory. First, if you look at all the different pictures of Clifford, he looks older in some of them, younger in some of them. He doesn't necessarily look the same. So you can't really say, oh, he was older in that picture with any surety at all, in my opinion, based on looking at his other pictures. Because, like I said, he looks older in some, younger in others. It just depends on how his hair is done, what he's wearing, facial expression, all of that. So, like I said, these are my opinions. Now, a crazy thing happened. Young boys broke into a store and stole a rifle. Then the two boys were seen supposedly in a town an hour away walking down the street with said rifle in their hands, and they were identified as Clifford and George. Clifford and Georgie. Um, they were 9 and 12. This was 1954. Highly unlikely. I tend to discount that, but that's just my opinion. Now, here's an interesting tidbit that I can't believe was never on Unsolved Mysteries, was never uh, talked about in any way. There was a lady, some accounts say she was a florist, some accounts say she owned a candy shop. And it's been said that the boys were messenger boys for her. And Clifford's mother said, when? From 4 to 6 p.m.? Possibly. Or maybe they skipped school occasionally and ran errands or went to school late. Who knows? His mother claims that she did not know, that he did not know her. You might not know that, especially back then when the attitude was be in before the streetlights turn on, you know? By the time streetlights turn on, you better be in. That sort of a deal. And so you might not know the people that your kids know. You're much less likely to back then, as strange as it sounds today. Excuse me. Because today people make play dates and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it would be less likely that your 9-year-old would know an adult you didn't know. But back then it was different because everything was much more trusting, much more, kids were left much more on their own. This lady's name was Mrs. Pigeon. Her and her family moved from the town, which is Verdun, Quebec. And she moved back herself for maybe 2 months and disappeared at the same time as the boys. Never to be seen again. They even contacted her family and they said, no, we've not seen her again. And so, again, this is Mrs. Pigeon. Did she take the 2 boys? I think that's an excellent possibility because it would certainly explain why both boys are missing together. Because I don't think Tex would have killed Georgie. And Tex couldn't have had his son because he raised his daughters. We do know that Tex had children all over the place, including 3 states in the United States that all had the same names, including one named Clifford, who has since, well, passed away, but he met his Canadian half-siblings, except for he also named Clifford. And the name Thorn, as mentioned, came from the fact that his father's real name, as far as anyone knows, was Edward Thorn, not Nephi Tex Sherwood. So, sounds like we need some DNA. But anyway, I think they did do some DNA though, because that's how other children were found and connected to Tex/Edward. He was also in the military. Tex/Edward. I don't think they should have just changed Clifford's name to Thorn in the missing persons reports and files. I don't think they should have done that. Maybe put in parentheses or in the description, the case description may go by Thorn. If Clifford and Georgie were alive today, they would be Clifford would be 80. He would be 80. Going to be 81 in the coming year. No. He was born in 45. He would have turned 80 this year. A year younger than my father. So he'd be 81 in the coming year. And Georgie would be 84 in the coming year. Because he would be 2 years older than my dad. And my father would be 82 in the coming year. So now, it's my understanding that one of the reasons that Georgie hung out with a younger child, not that 3 years is that much younger, but it is when you're 12. It's nothing when you're, 27 and 30, but when you're 12, it's something. Was that he might have been slower. And believe me, there's nothing wrong with that to me. I just know that from my own experience, having been more comfortable with younger children. Up to a certain age. And some articles are saying that they weren't best friends, but they knew each other. They walked to school together every day despite being in different classes. But I got the impression they were good friends from other things that I've seen and read, including having talked to Georgie's family, which I've had the privilege to do. And the two families evidently never really talked to each other. But I want to let you know what states Tex had families, because he had at least 7 families: Canada, Texas, Michigan. There were at least 2 Cliffords, 2 Colleens. He was married at least 7 times. So there are other kids out there. And who knows if this Clifford, the missing Clifford, tried to reach out. Now, one person said that maybe they skipped school that day and were abducted by a trafficker. Could have been. Or abducted and done away with, because he doesn't think that they survived 48 hours. Which is also possible, but you'd think they would have found him. I don't think they went fishing and drowned, because that's been looked at to death. No pun intended. So, I personally think they need to look more closely at the florist/candy store lady, Mrs. Pigeon. I didn't make that up. Her name was Mrs. Pigeon. Spelled like the bird, Pidgon, Geon. So, because that's not a coincidence I believe in. I don't really believe in coincidences, but that's not a coincidence that should be taken lightly. 2 kids disappear. And a lady that only came back to town for 2 months closes up shop and disappears, but doesn't go back to where her family moved to? Sorry, that's bizarro. Mrs. Edward Pigeon. She rented a flat for 3 weeks in Verdun and disappeared at the same time as the boys. Maybe they were planning on meeting her that day and they didn't know she was going to take them away. You know, I just feel like there's a lot to be investigated here. Need to figure out where she showed up next. You know what I mean? Because she didn't go back to where her family was living. Oh, a small town about an hour's walk. The town of Ville Emard. Oh, she owned a candy store in the town of Ville Emard. About an hour's walk. And her shop was right in between Verdun and the park where the boys were said to skip school and often gone to. It would make sense if it was a candy store that they would stop in. You know what I mean? Because the candy would have been very cheap. You know, penny candy back then. And maybe they were used as messenger boys. Or maybe something else that she was doing to them. I don't know. It's speculation. But evidently, people walked an hour routinely back then. But for her to end up in Verdun for 2 months and then disappear in October, the same time they did, like I said, I don't believe in those kind of coincidences. You gotta let me know what you think. Like I said, I have had the privilege over the years to talk to Georgie's family, cousins and stuff. And I believe a niece. And I do want to thank them very much because it bothers them that he was so limited in the case. That the case was all about Clifford. They wanted to be on the Unsolved Mysteries. So, at least a couple of them did anyway. So, yeah. That's sad. I guess they thought that Clifford was more interesting, even though they disappeared together, which makes it interesting. More interesting anyway. It's upsetting to me. So I wanted to bring you the case for both boys. Equally, Clifford and Georgie. So, this will go up on my YouTube over at Kidmissing TV with lots of pictures. Some won't be very good because some of the pictures aren't very good, of both boys and a picture of Mrs. Pigeon. Like I said, that was her name, Mrs. Pigeon. I kid you not. I will put some links in the show notes. I am using my brand new microphone. So, I hope it comes out really clear. Like I said, why that woman was never talked about on the Unsolved Mysteries or anywhere, I have no idea. Even on the Doe Network, where they changed his last name and talked about the store owner, which they called a flower shop owner, they never mentioned her name. The fact that it was more likely a candy store. Because I don't see two boys, 12 and 9, walking into a flower shop and getting a job as messenger boys for a flower shop. A candy store, yes. So, I think that's more likely. There was a lot of issues with reporting back then. These boys disappeared in 1954, which was the 71st year just passed in October. And things were very different in 1954. Keep that in mind. Like I said, kids ran around until the streetlights came on. So, thank you so much for joining me. God bless you. I don't know when I'll come to you with another, but hopefully soon. This was important to me because this is the biggest break and update in this case that there's been in 70 years. So, again, I want to thank Georgie's family for talking to me a long time ago. I never forgot it. We just never were able to arrange for them to come on the show. But they're more than welcome. And thank you all so much for being here. God bless you. Please check out my other episodes here on Spotify. And I want to thank Spotify for hosting Kidmissing Radio. Bye, guys.